Hi, everyone. Long time no see. This is Jen from Jen Metamorphosis Mentoring.
Hi, this is Monifa Harris. I'm a voice confidence coach.
Yay. So, Monifa, we're back again to our little reunion. I'm in New Zealand now. The time zone is completely different, but I'm just in the spring season. You're in autumn.
That's right.
So, continue on with our authenticity topic. So, I just want to share with you. So, the other day, I started my jogging rhythm, right? My jogging routine in the morning. And I was like running to the hilltop and I was like sitting there. I was like, why do we have this authenticity project topic going on?
Yeah.
Why do we need to talk about being authentic? If authenticity is such an easy thing to tap in, right? Then we don't even talk about it, right? So the
We
truth is,
could.
it takes effort. It takes effort to be authentic, right? And there's a lot of parts I would love to talk to you about. Is sometimes we feel that unworthiness, the unworthiness to speak our truth. Like we're afraid of being, I don't know, like offending other people, or other people don't get us. Those fears can just kind of bubble up, right? When we really want to step into that speaking your truth, be that authentic version of who you are. So I would love to talk to you about this. Like, how does the unworthiness serve in this picture? It is
Oh my goodness.
huge, I know.
It, it's it serves us up in so many ways. It likes to
Yeah.
trip us up, the unworthiness piece, because you can be about being authentic, and you're doing a pretty bang up job with it. And then you realize that you're acting or not acting, because you're not feeling quite worthy, and it's actually causing inauthenticity, right? Like whether that is about what you're willing to share in a certain arena or in a public place or even in private, right? Or if it's keeping you doing even the opposite, like doing what you've always done, right? Because at least that's worked up until now, and just you've convinced yourself that the other won't work, out of that own self of identity as unworthy, right? And so you can be thinking, well, I'm authentically doing this because this is what works, when a fuller authenticity or self-expression would be to step into something that would be totally different, right? And I think that comes up all the time. And I think because I think that point of like, why, what's the point? Like what's the point of working or talking or trying to be, or, being more authentic?
Right.
Like we are, as much as we can be, right? Like I feel like I was talking to you about this, about we judge ourselves so much. We judge ourselves so much. And honestly, like we're doing the best we can. And by judging ourselves, we end up judging others. So I was also mentioning the story in which I became a bit judgy because of what I considered to be inauthentic. And I'm always of the mind, like if you're open-hearted and when you come into the room with authenticity and you set up a space of love, to be, so that people can be their full selves, that there's no inauthenticity needed. But then I had that question come up and I'm like, well, if that's how they believe they have to be because of whatever self-judgment they're experiencing, or their belief that they have to be a certain way in order to have their needs met, then this is as authentic as they get to be with themselves right now. So maybe, and that's enough of that. And so I had to drop that filter of what I thought was not fully authentic. And then like, again, had to come back to myself, like, well, how can you be authentic in this situation without being judging,
Thank you for
So
you're speaking to my heart right now, is because that comparison, the comparison of the other person's experience is probably higher than me or lower than me, or whatever we put that comparison in a certain form, right? It triggers certain fear in us, the fear of not being good enough, not important enough, not just operating. It pushes me, for example, personally, pushes me into that scarcity mindset. Like, okay, then what do I do if I'm not that? And that is an ideal image, even for the word authenticity. We need to show up in a certain way in order to seem authentic, right?
mm-hmm.
But is that really true? Or we're being somewhat kidnapped by the definition in the dictionary? Authentic means this. So we try to comply or morph ourselves into those type of, it becomes a fantasy or illusion. You know what I mean?
Well, I call this, in singing, I call this replicating the past, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have a high enlightenment moment. And so you think, well, that's the highest love, light, and truth or experience you'll ever have. So you are walking around recreating that. And now they have commercials with comedy about, gurus, what I'm saying? Like, because that's only as authentic as it was in that moment. Right. And in each moment after is either a creation of the enlightenment within that space, or it's trying to replicate something that has happened before. And that is always distorted, because we that's why it's so important to be present, right? Like, being present doesn't allow for distortion, because it doesn't have a story about the past, and it doesn't have an expectation that may or may be right, may or may not be right in the future, right? Like, and actually, that was part of the conversation I had about authenticity the other day, was that presence is sorely required to be authentic, right? Like, you have to be present to what's up right now, who's in the room, like who are you showing up for, and then who are you being in that present moment, because that moment may not be enlightened. Like, yeah, maybe you had an enlightened moment, or 5 or even 10, right? But are you in that space right now, right? Then you don't have to replicate that moment right now, right? You can just start from where you are right now. And then if that moment occurs, then lucky you, right? And as we know from the stories from masters, like that's the only way it's going to happen anyways, right? So you might as well just chalk it up to science. I'm kidding. Like, but yeah, like, it's so important. And a lot of times we carry our identity of what is worthy of upliftment, right?
Trippy.
And we take that into an experience that doesn't, like, authenticity does not require that. Like, I was making the example of, if you're a vegetarian going into somebody's house and in a culture that it would be rude to turn down an offering of a meal, right?
Yeah.
Are you, how authentic is it, right? Like, how authentic is it if you're wanting to kind of create loving connection with this family, that you say, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm vegetarian, but I truly appreciate the offering. And like but in that culture, they don't get it, right?
No.
They have no experience. Like, what is this vegetarian? Ask you this question, right? Like, and they have no experience of that. Then, most of us would compromise, right? Or even if we're gluten free and they have like bread or something on the table, like, and like these things, most of us would compromise, and not necessarily because it's not, we do identify like we're being healthy and we want to have our spiritual vessel and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the truth is, in that moment, it's either you're connecting and building a relationship with this person, either that's your real, that's real for you, or it's more important to like take care of your identity and yourself, and either can be true for anybody, but most of us would compromise and eat something, right? And then like and say, oh, thank you so much, I have, you know I've had, my full, I'm full of what you have offered for me, like, and so you wouldn't like, but you wouldn't discount their offering, and you wouldn't even discount yourself, really, because you're not going to sit there and eat the whole meal and then make yourself sick afterward. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the other
Yeah.
part. You could do that, and that wouldn't be authentic either. That would just be you being stupid. trying to be cultural or something.
What you just said is so pointed, practical. It's in the physical daily life. It happens,
Yeah.
right? And so many times, I call myself, okay, like kind of like shape shift into that social, what's the word, niceties, social niceties. And then you probably unconsciously doing something or behaving a certain way to gain, like consent, or, people would accept you, right? But
Right.
I just have to say, being present, as what you just talked about, is so important, is because only in the present we get to see when we're out of, when we're out of that element of truth,
Yeah.
out of my truth, I get to call myself out, right? I get to
Yeah.
call myself out and like, hey, hold on a sec. Is that really true? Did
Yeah.
I make assumption that I really can't I really can't eat a whole plate of,
Right.
of the meals that I'm not okay with, or what? Like,
Yeah.
there is only presence allowed us to really call ourselves out.
Yeah. Well,
Because
it forces you, right?
yeah, it forces us. It forces us. And
Yeah. Like, and even when you were saying, like, you tend to have this thing, and it is societal. Like, there is a way of fitting in, right? Like, it's what I call, kind of just the identity, and in the voice too. Like, we tend to chorus with others. We have conversations and match tonality. It's the way it is. And you may change the way you speak in order to have a conversation with somebody. And it's not, there's this difference between like connecting and communicating. And I even call it maybe even conforming and connecting. Like, those are two different things. Like if you're conforming out of the need to be accepted, then we're running back to like, am I afraid that I will be in shame if I act a certain way in this area, in this conversation, right? And then yeah, like, so there's a difference between the two too, and when you're like you said, when you're present, then you're asking yourself the right questions, like how much of myself am I allowing to show up in this space? And like, in the same question can be asked in the food scenario, right? How much of myself am I allowing? Am I allowing them to get to know me as a vegetarian and what that means to me? Am I, and you know, and so it can also, it can go both ways, right? And then your experience of having that conversation can be all of those things, like, well, I wouldn't normally, right? But this is like such an amazing offering to me, and I really honor and respect this, and I, you know, all of that, and do it, you know, and eat it without that, you know, connotation, all right? But then when you're done, we're like, well, and you know, normally this is something I wouldn't eat. And so I don't even know if my body would take a whole meal. And so like, and that's what, you know, you have that conversation, you know, like in that, let them experience all of who you are. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to hide who you are as a vegetarian to make them feel better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, but you do want to be present to the context and the situation in the room that you're in. Yeah.
Because when we're discounting ourselves, a part of our truth, oh, I don't think or assume is not going to be allowed or to be accepted by the majority of the people sharing the same space, and I discounted it. What happened is, it's kind of like, you know, you're investing on this bucket of unworthiness. You know, that's like an unworthiness bucket right here, and you just continue to feel that guilt and shame recycling over and over. And I know how it feels because I used to do it before, and it
Yeah.
felt awful. It felt awful until the time I recognized, like, you know what, the assumptions are the only, making the assumption is the part of you that you are not willing to accept yourself. Not how other people won't accept you or not is other people's business, but yet you are not allowing yourself to accept yourself before you let other people to choose they're going to accept you or not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Same concept here. And
Yeah.
because of that, you're not allowed the true part of you to be shown to others. Then immediate discount on yourself literally turn into like unworthiness cycle. It's pretty poisonous. It's pretty.
Mm. Yeah, no, and you know, you say yourself, and I also me, like it's definitely been a cycle I lived in for quite a while. Um, yeah, it is one of those like call it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That that when we have this interpretation of ourselves that we won't be accepted in the fullness of who we are, which is one of the reasons why like my old self would have like said, you know, maybe even eaten half of the meal and said, you know, and would have said, oh, thank you so much. This is so perfect and da 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 da, out of wanting them to feel loved and accepted while not allowing for my own experience and personality to be loved and accepted by stating who I am and stating how I normally live, and having and being and opening that possibility of a conversation and being accepted in my totality and not just in the portion that is welcoming their culture and tradition, right? So so yeah, so it becomes that, and it became that too with even when I was trying to build my business. um I didn't even consider doing my business as it is now because I assumed that it wouldn't be accepted, and therefore it didn't even occur to me, like it didn't even occur to me as a possibility until I had a meditative moment in which, you know, the intuition was just like, duh, you know, like why would you, like my idea at the time was to do work with crystals and to sell crystals, and then I, as I build my crystal business big enough, then I can buy crystal bowls, and I can do sound healing ceremonies, and I can help and I can teach people how to heal through sound. Like, so literally I wanted to build a business to do what I already do. Like I was already capable of doing, which is teach people how to heal through sound, through their own voice, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that you didn't need any tools or instruments for that, you know, like, you know, tools are beautiful, and we were born with one, right? And let's experience that miracle. And who else is going to do it? Nobody else was doing it, you know, as far as I knew at the time, you know. I think there are other teachers, but yeah, at the time I didn't know that. And backing away from what I thought was possible or how I would be accepted was actually making me miss out on my calling, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, I so hear you.
Yeah.
And I love to point out what you just said earlier about the judgy part of ourselves, right? So in the moment of, being so present and seeing ourselves, like going through some patterns, right? Like, oh shoot, I was just being righteous. I just want to be right. My little ego here, right? And then being able to call it out, but not feeling shameful about it is another layer of the story, right? Because sometimes you're like, oh, I've been working on myself for so long, how could I still, having this recurring pattern of judging myself for being righteous? How come I didn't conquer it, And I started to think it's kind of like when you have a flat tire, right? You're not going to splash all the other three, right? Yeah. So when there's a flat tire, you just see, wow, there's opportunity for me to just fix this, resolve it, so the car can still move on, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
judging.
Yeah. So much so. And I've experienced a lot of that this last couple weeks too. In this new energy. And it's been like, oh my goodness, that's there. Like that's me. Like I've had some thoughts that are highly self-critical. And I'm like, whoa, like where is that coming from? And then and it's been, and it could be that I could shame myself. Oh, I should be in a higher state than this. And like I do so much meditation. You would think that I would know better than to talk to myself this way,
I can only relate to that.
but like it's, really I always chalk it up to being human, and I just let it be what it is, and let it be an opportunity for it to be different, to let it be its own healing experience, pointing to what I can be wholer in my experience of. And so that's what I did. I'm like, oh, this is here. Like this is showing up. And then, and also to see when it's repeating, because there's so many things that we can't see the tires flat when we're inside the car and we're at a stoplight. Like there's no information to feed back to us, right? So it's going to happen when we're in the middle of something, and then that historic perspective is going to show up the way it's always shown up, and then so when we have all these complaints, or the things that we're complaining about, those complaints are trying to tell you like, hey, like this isn't lining up with that's not, this is not that. And like again, like a lot of times we see it in other people. But that's something I learned early on. It's like if you're seeing it in other people, then it's something that we need to check back to see, because if you're judging yourself, you're judging others. Like if I'm criticizing myself like that, that must be coming up in, when I'm criticizing others. And where has that been hiding? Like is my question. Like, like, wait a minute. Like this is not okay. Like, where have you been and why are you here now? And then, again, it's like I could judge it, or I could decide to do some work and do my best to heal it,
So it actually gives us space to see, once we see it and we call ourselves out, well, either in the middle of it or in reflection of, in hindsight, right? It creates space for us to say, yeah, there's opportunity for me to change.
Yeah, there's an opportunity to be the person I thought I was, right? Like, we can like try to push it under the rug and like pretend like, oh, that's not there. I don't even believe that should be a thing, right? Like it doesn't matter what you believe, but like, it's a matter like what's happening in your current experience is telling you exactly what you believe. You can believe it or not believe that. But yeah, like it's that thing that, yeah, like just see what it is and see it for what it is. And if you don't like it, then find out where it's really coming from and to do something different. But that first thing is always a reflection. You, like, if you knew it was there, you wouldn't do it, right? Like
I don't think so.
hopefully. Well, for most of us at this point, right? Like, we didn't know it was going to happen, so it's going to be reflective, right? And that's the first step of learning. It's being able to recognize, being aware of it, and then you can start to integrate it and allow for something different. But you have to first it has to happen. And then you can reflect on it.
Let everything through you. Let everything through you, so we are able to heal whatever that's not, in alignment with who we are. It is easy to say because it's going to challenge our ego. Our ego doesn't like it.
Oh,
But
it doesn't. No, we don't like to look bad. No.
no, not at all. But at the same time, it is just so much potency in here. It's like, instead of saying, okay, I want to be authentic, right? I mean, this is the whole theme of the authenticity project. But instead of saying, okay, how do I be more authentic? But release that, right? Release the word authenticity and truly see ourselves as just, we're just being human to experience all the ups and downs, all the ups and downs. And whenever we get caught up in the judging mode, we get to not slash the other three tires. Practice not to slash the other three tires and say, yeah, wow, what a revelation. What a revelation. And I get to learn what, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What do I get to know now? Yeah, and that moment of reflection is where the answer lies as well. Like, I think of this, and it's so interesting what you said, like, allow everything to come through, allow everything voice, like, to speak, because when I think of that, I think of, how I speak in front of a choir, which is like, if you make a mistake, make a loud one, right? Then we know what to fix, right? And it's the same thing in healing. It's like, and it takes a bold person to make that statement in some rooms, but like, it is true. It is very true. The sooner we know what's going on, the sooner that we can work on the thing that will most, assist or fix what's going on. And it's the same thing, what you're saying is just to be present and see what comes out. If you can be, like, if you're brave enough to try that out, then you'll start to see exactly what's in you, and then you can do something about it, but as long as you're allowing it to hide from yourself, then there's nothing you can do, right? And if you wait till the concert to share what you think is true,
I think that's gonna work.
then then becomes, like, those events where I apologize for what I may have said at that last interview, right? Like, that's when it happens, because you don't give the chance to express it in the practice of being authentic, but yeah.
There's so many humbling moments that, I feel like my emotions are teaching me or have been teaching me. Like, I'm an emotional being. So, based on the fact that we're all made of water, like 70% or above are made of water, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we feel the need to suppress the emotion, right? So we don't seem chaotic. But in fact, it's because there's a word chaotic, and that's like a big no-no, right? In a social standard type of way. No, you should be, more properly mannered, or whatever that is. And I felt this guilt for not express my anger or express my sadness. And I need to keep up with a certain way to showing up emotionally to seem I'm stable enough. That was like in the past, when I first stepped on this journey of authenticity. I didn't know how to channel my anger, but yet the anger has so much information for me. It's like, it's because your boundary is being violated, maybe. And then what are the boundaries? Why do you feel uncomfortable around it? And so all those little pieces of information are so valuable for me to understand myself even more. So the next time when I feel that same emotion, I get to communicate better. I get to say it and let the anger be expressed, but with sanity, rather than like, oh my God, I'm rage, So yeah, emotion. I want to know, how do you deal with yours? Because I know you're a water sign.
Yes, but like this is a growing edge for me. I am freely and willing to admit that, like being emotional in public, like being emotional around others. This is something that I still feel very much like vulnerable in, because I have received the message that it's not appropriate. I have received it's very much internalized at this point. Like I would have to work to be overly emotional in certain contexts. Now, it's direct conversations and communications, like I will show my emotion. But I will show it, like, and how I speak to it with my students is that I speak to it with the end intention in mind.
Yeah, great, beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what becomes I don't think of it as a filter. It's a recognition of my audience. It's, like the way I think of it as a voice, as a singer, I think of who I'm speaking to and what my outcome and desire, result is. And then I speak into that. And so my anger may look different to some people, right? Because it may not be loud. But I'll tell you, it will be if the boundaries are crossed, and I've already stated the boundaries, like, so you can see me. Like, and it's not pretty. Like when my husband, because I expect him to know my boundaries, right? So if and then, there's always that double check moment. It's like, well, did I ever speak my boundary, or did I just assume he knew it because we've been together for 15 years? Like there's always that in a relationship. But in general, like he knows most of them. So if he's crossing something we have had a conversation about, and I do allow myself to get loud. I allow myself to get loud and and just so that I'm also speaking the intention. Like if I'm getting loud, it's because I want you to hear me. Right? Like people don't realize when they're shouting, like that's what the problem is. They don't feel heard. Right? And so I'm also like, I'm not getting in my own way by just like screaming profanities and like, so like all you hear is obscurity, or obscuration, those things I don't not that get in the way of me being heard and the thing that I expect to be heard. Right. So I do get, but I have also a big voice. So it's like, it doesn't take much for me to get. I'm also pretty conscious of that. So if I'm using my voice loudly, it's because I'm defending, I'm defending what I believe holds true for me, what I believe it takes to respect who I am, and what I value.
So bottom line is not letting our voice be suppressed, even when the emotional flow wants to come through, you don't block it, right?
Yeah.
But using our body, maybe allow our body to feel it first. That's my way of doing it, like letting my
Yeah.
body to feel the location of where that emotion wants to be felt. And then let it through, like what we just said, let it through. And then
Yeah.
coming back to my mental consciousness of how to respond,
Yeah.
So it's like a process for me to dance in between my mental and emotional sort of boundaries.
Yeah, for sure. Like, for sure. It's a dance. It is a dance. I call it an internal dance, right? Like it is a dance. Like, and so when you feel it coming, like, and you will, like it'll feel like something's coming over you, if especially when a boundary is crossed, like something is gonna stand up and you're like, that righteousness, like a whole other righteous anger, right? Like the righteous anger is a whole other level of anger. And it's easy to step into when we have again these standards of spirituality, of expectation of what it looks like to work between humans, and those standards are high. Like we don't want those standards are for a reason. And it's not that anybody's above or below them. It's that if you're coming into my space, then this is what's happening, right? Like this is what's happening in my space, and how, and like, and where is this is not in my space. This is not where I've accepted. And yeah, speaking through those emotions. And when I say that, a lot of times people think that you're speaking like and ignoring the emotions. No, like the emotions that are in you are coming up and out and through your words, you know. And so allowing that to happen, and allowing those emotions to speak through is how we keep ourselves aligned.
Yes.
And if we're not doing it, then we're causing other blockages, like things that, blockage might not be the wrong word. What we're doing is we're programming ourselves to continue that cycle. Like that's what's happening. And so we don't want to do that. We want to, program for alignment. And so, yeah, so we want to, as much as possible, let that out. And at this point, I just don't go into spaces in which I don't feel like I can experience all my emotions. It may change one day and I may decide to do something different. But that's where I choose to spend my space and energy, like my time and energy at this point, so it helps a lot.
It's beautiful because
Yeah.
I really feel like, processing our emotion becomes a skill in this era we're in, right? This era, like everything's so, I don't know, wonky and polarized, right? Once we're able to learn how to process our own emotions, I have to say, we literally allow the ancestral lineage, the wounding part of the lineage be healed, and also the next generation can be affected positively. So they know how to process their own emotion,
Yes.
it's part of self-love. It's part of self-love to take care of what our emotion is trying to bring certain messages to us, rather than say, no, how could I feel this way? I gotta make it go away,
Yeah, I mean, I laugh, but that's how we've been raised, taught, experienced our society. So that's just what's up right now. But also what's up right now is to find a way to honor our emotions in forum, in between people, and in conversation, and in groups, and even in government. Like it's becoming something where it's okay to be emotional if you care. Like, and I always, the one thing I do in the state before you leave this side of the conversation is that I always say that emotions are always valid and they're never someone else's fault.
I love that.
So
I love that. Emotions, all your emotions are valid and it's never someone else's fault.
yeah, like your emotions are your experience, and you get to share your experiences in the way that you feel is necessary and or appropriate. And just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean it's somebody else's responsibility and or like you need to wait on them to change the way you feel.
Yes.
Yeah. It's something that comes up a lot in relationships, but it's also showing up with the polarity, right? Because people are going at each other because of what they believe should be happening. And yeah, you have your own, truths, and that's okay. And but you don't get to attack other people for having different beliefs and emotions. Like we're just different. I mean, we've got to start accepting that about each other. Like if we want our freedom to be everything that we are and who we are wanting to be or ever going to be, then we have to start allowing others to do the same, and not make it their job to make us feel safe, comfortable, loved, all of those things.
Such a skill. What we're talking about is such a skill.
This is,
Yeah,
mastery level stuff here.
it's mastery.
Yeah.
Like we understand it, but how are we going to really allow the practice to just, do it, embody it, right? As I quit
Yeah.
disease, stop abusing, stop accusing, actually not abusing, accusing, stop blaming, stop criticizing.
Yeah.
It sounds so easy.
And like it's really, it's not that hard. Like if you believe what you believe, just state what you believe. You don't have to attack somebody else's beliefs, just say what you believe. And then they can accept it if they're ready or not, but like don't lambast somebody else's way of being,
Feel our emotions and let other people to feel theirs, and let's just feel and not kind of throw it all out before you process it. I think that's how the world is going to go into that direction if we start.
Yeah. Like when you're able to do this, it'll fix itself. Because when right now the biggest problem is that all of a sudden, like, it's okay again to be emotional about something that you believe in. And so people are getting loud about it. And then but the problem is that in that loudness, they're shaming the other side. And there's no need for that part. We don't have to shame the other side to state where we want to go in the environment. And what happens when we just state our beliefs and then listen? Like this is the other part of that stuff, is like to listen to others, is that when they are listened to, they can hear themselves in the new understanding. Right. When somebody is truly heard, they're heard in your energy. Like when you are listening and you're the person there, they're heard in your energy. And so that will reflect to them their own voice.
And this is the most powerful place to be.
Yes. Yes. And and I trust me, it's a lot more effective than saying, you need to, why aren't you thinking about, like, it's way more effective. This is why I'm also kind of careful about who's in my space, because I trigger people just because I'm around. So I'm hearing you. So I like at the same time as I'm hearing you, and then I'm like honoring the space that you're speaking in, like now you hear yourself, right? And some people don't like that feeling, right? And so it's really, like it can get a little antsy sometimes, but it's so much faster than me trying to convince somebody they need to change something.
I can't agree with you more than that, because triggering, yeah, it could be so uncomfortable and it's catalytic. But when we're looking at it as a medicine, to really let it reflect back to you and see, oh, wow, what's going on in my inner world where I feel so strongly wanting to just like purge something out. And in return, we feel much more in peace inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll always trust ourselves to make a change before we trust somebody else to tell us what we need to change.
For sure.
Yeah.
Already, Monifa, I don't know how long we've been talking, but I just love this conversation so much. Okay. So happy full moon.
Yeah, Pisces full moon.
Yeah, today is also the Chinese Lunar Festival and
Lunar festival.
cake.
Yay.
Yeah, and we will come back around and see what we're gonna weave into more topics around this subject of authenticity, even though this is so broad. But
Yeah, it's so big.
But we're bringing,
There's so many edges.
whenever we feel the inspiration to share.
Yes, exactly. I can't wait. There's so much here, and yeah, and I'm hoping each one just brings us a little bit closer to
each other, because we are all on this journey together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth.
Alrighty.
Love you, Jen.
I love you, Monifa. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.